The best ads don't sell products, they tell stories. And whether you're selling a brand or selling yourself, Neil Foard is here to show you how to do it well. I'm Kelly Callahan Poe, host of the Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Story Sells in Advertising and in Life with Neil Foard. Neil spent over 30 years creating award-winning campaigns for global brands like Budweiser, Lexus, and Sony, and ranked among the top 10 most awarded creative directors in the world for his work on Toyota. Now as principal of Storyfire and founder of the Conspiracy of Kindness, he teaches business leaders and C-suite executives how to use the timeless art of storytelling and persuasion to win hearts, build trust, and make life a whole lot easier. Welcome, Neil.
Hey, thank you for that introduction. What your guests don't know is that we had a long conversation before we started recording. And I must tell you, this woman is delightful. Kelly is a delight.
Oh, I'll take it. We have a lot of commonalities, which we may bring into the session today. So let's first start with like a little softball question. Why is storytelling so important right now in the age of AI? And if you could bring in some of the stats that we talked about before, that would be helpful.
Well, there's a wonderful author, Yuval Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*. And he has this phrase that I've heard him use, which is the most important stories we tell are the ones we tell ourselves about ourselves. And stories for each of us as individuals, the story of who we are, the story of how we operate in the world. The story you tell yourself is your destiny. It's what determines how you act in public. For example, if you are a new parent and you think to yourself, I'm a father now, or I'm a mother now. When I'm in public, am I behaving in such a way that it is an example to my child? So you can see how that changes how you act in the world, the story of who you are. Well, just now, first of all, I want to say that stories are the operating system of the human species. For thousands of years, this is how we understood each other and understood the world. Why does the volcano go? Why is there a volcano? Are they angry? Is somebody angry at us? Why are there seasons? Why do people die? All of these things had to be explained for us to have any sense of control over our environment. So we would sit around the campfire and try to work these things out to make ourselves feel better, to make ourselves feel safe, to make ourselves feel like we belong. And stories are the default way that we take in information. And you know how it goes. You give a 20-minute meeting and you'll have 6 slides and there's 200 bullet points and everything. This is not how people take in information. It's certainly not how they remember it. It makes no emotional difference to them. All of your attributes are the things you were trying to sell. By contrast, if you probably haven't heard the story of David and Goliath in 10 years, or the tortoise and the hare in 15. You haven't heard these stories, and yet you could repeat them to me right now with a pretty high degree of fidelity. And what's more importantly, you could tell me what they mean. You could tell me the moral of the story, which means that this is a system for giving you information in such a way that you internalize it, understand it, and can spread it like a meme. This is how culture is formed, is through things that we repeat to one another because they're meaningful to each other, because they had emotional impact on us. Okay, so you can see that, oh yes, I get it. If I go into a business meeting and the president of the company tells me a story about an experience she had, or she has made a connection with somebody and wants to talk about somebody else, and in order to tell you who they are, she relates a story of how they met. Now I have had the experience that the president had. Yes, it's ersatz. I mean, it's a reproduction, but I get it. I was there. So stories, I just want to give the benefit of your audience, like, no, this is how we take in information. This is how we remember information. This is how it becomes meaningful to us in a way that we can spread that information. And therefore, that's why stories are important. But let's talk about why now that they're so important. Well, because human beings are logic resistant. And we're not persuaded by rational points. Oftentimes, the thing I'll use as an example is I'll say to an audience, how many of you have ever been involved romantically with somebody that you knew was not good for you, but you couldn't stop yourself? And in a crowd of 100, only 2 hands will go up. I'm like, oh, you are a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
No, a good example for men would be like, you'd say, okay, guys, have you ever had this conversation with yourself? Oh, I'm too busy to go to the gym today. And then you'll find yourself watching a 45-minute YouTube video on salt. Like, you had time. You're rationalizing. And, this is how we are. We're not rational beings. We do what we do for emotional reasons. We make decisions emotionally. Well, stories touch the emotions. Stories sit in your heart. You take them in and remember them in the amygdala, not in the hippocampus. So you react to them emotionally. And you would know, being in advertising and marketing, that when people are emotionally moved by something, it promotes action.
Yes.
It promotes belief. And you know how people are with brands. Brands are only effective because they stimulate an emotion. Well, stories give you the opportunity to stimulate an emotion. And I'll give you a couple of examples during our conversation of like ads that I was a small part of, that where you just go, oh, this is going to work, because it's saying, I care about you.
Yeah.
That you matter to me in a way that it's almost like when you hear somebody that you have a deep affection for, and they say to you unsolicited, I love you. I care about you. The sensation is that you're bonded to that person in a loyalty beyond reason.
Yeah.
And this is what all brands crave to have, is a relationship with the person who sees them in the world. And if you think about it, how much more satisfying would it be for a brand to have an emotional relationship with their customer in such a way that, let me ask you a question. When it comes to tipping, are you an over tipper?
I tend to be.
Yeah, I am. I go to the same restaurants all the time. And when I found a place I like, I lock in and then I over tip like a maniac. I'll give you, I bring them toys. I don't just leave the money. I'll put these on the bill,
Yeah.
And I'll leave Hot Wheels for the male waiters. Why? Because I want them to have an emotional response when I walk in the door. I want them to be happy to see me. It makes me happy that they're happy to see me. And all brands should operate from that mindset of, I want to so over-deliver on what my customer gets here that they would be heartbroken if I ever went away. And so, back in the context of stories, when you do gestures like this, when you over-tip or you give them extras, or a brand does that, it tells a story. And the story it tells is, I'm a human being and so are you, and I see you as a person, not as a sheep to be fleeced. I see you as not somebody whose money I want, and then that's the end of our transaction. It's, isn't this fun? And then your question was, why AI right now? And I would say, well, it's because of AI. Because, right now what's happening to us, all of us, is AI and its ilk, algorithms, are being weaponized to divide us and rage bait us, because it's engaging. Because when they can tell you about somebody that you should be afraid of, or they tell you how you're being victimized, you're a sucker, or it says you should fear these people, or any one of a number of ways that algorithms try to engage you through fear or hatred or jealousy, or, well, in that era, stories are the antidote. Stories are the way that you can reconnect with people and say, not everybody is out to get you. You shouldn't walk through the world afraid of other people, because we didn't survive this long as a species by victimizing everybody that we saw. On the contrary, people are actually pretty cool. Most of them. Most of them are pretty cool. And, have you ever had this response from people? They say, wow, I spent 9 hours on my device today and it's made me so happy. No. The only thing that makes us happy is connection with other human beings.
Absolutely, yes.
Even people that like to be alone a lot, nevertheless, they like to feel like they're connected to somebody else. Yeah. And in an age of algorithms when we are being made fearful and more angry and more divided, we need to reach out to each other with the chief operating system, which is, can I tell you what it's like to be me? And I'd love to hear what it's like to be you. And there you go. How's that for an answer to your question?
Well, there were some great stats that we talked about earlier with regards to storytelling and how important it is. And one of the stats was executive mentions of the word storytelling on earnings call hit 469 in 2025, which is up from 147 in 2015. So it's not a trend anymore. It's more of like a boardroom an imperative. And then the other stat that I thought was important is LinkedIn researchers wrote in the New York Times that AI will replace 96 of the software engineers' current skills, and the most durable skills are the soft ones: communication, leadership, and empathy. And that 70% of executives agree storytelling is a super skill that powers all of them. And so that is kind of all leading up to what we're talking about here, is why, we're all worried about losing our jobs, but that's the part of AI that it can't do.
Yeah, it's very difficult to persuade somebody to try to take on this as a new skill. But it is really, it's like asbestos. It's flame proof.
Yeah.
Because AI and the algorithms, for as good as they are, like ChatGPT and chatbots and so forth, they're aggregators. They're gatherers of data. They don't have a point of view. What they do is they serve up the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Like that's what they've been programmed to do, is to aggregate everything and then spit out an anodyne average answer. And the problem with being average is that, and marketers know this better than anyone, advertisers know this better than anyone, when you are average, you are not the signal, you are the noise. When they say it's a cluttered market, yeah, you're the clutter, not the thing that stands out. And by the way, that word anodyne, which I only really learned what it meant about a year ago, it means inoffensive and bland. And it doesn't arouse tension. And you need to arouse an itch in somebody to make them curious for more, or provoke their thought process so that they're engaged in a meaningful way that leaves them better off. So anodyne, which is what the AI produces in any kind of recommendation about what to say, it's bland and average. And think about, like, you and I, we have taste. Do we only listen to average books and music and stories? Do we only go to see average movies? Do we only go to see bland, or do we dress in bland and average clothes? Do we crave bland and average food? Do we like to drive bland and average cars? No, everybody wants to express themselves with flair and interest and say fun and interesting things. Anybody who's funny, by definition, they're playing with the language in such a way that it breaks a rule, that it sets an expectation and then violates the expectation, and that's funny. And you know how attractive a sense of humor is. I mean, for both men and women, wow, women with a sense of humor that adds 3 points to the score. I mean, and I will tell you in really good faith, from all of my male friends, you say, if you are in a party and you see an astonishingly beautiful woman, or you meet a very funny one, who do you spend time with? They say, hands down, it's 10 out of 10. All the men go, I would vastly more spend the time with a funny woman. Because think about all she's broadcasting about herself. She's saying, I read a lot, or I pay attention to things, or, I will hold your interest long into our golden years, when both of us are lined and wrinkled and flabby. I will still be interesting to you. And that to me is a very meaningful thing, to go, AI is incapable of being that person, because AI has no taste. AI has no point of view. And these things are always expressed in stories. It doesn't seem like, it doesn't have to be a beginning, middle, and end. It's simply that you have chosen to dress a certain way that expresses a certain flair, or has a certain slogan on your shirt, or some relationship to an old alma mater. All of these things tell us, yes, yes, exactly. Like the fact that you've chosen to have the Chinese symbol on your chest. It is a deliberate story that you're telling to the world in the hope that somebody else will find it interesting. In a way, just adopting that is sending a vibe into the universe. And that frequency it's like a radio signal saying, is there anybody out there? And somebody's going to go, I hear the signal.
It's true.
Now, tell me about that. So the why now it becomes important to tell stories is so that you will separate yourself from the anodyne, bland average of sounding like everybody else. And by the way, you may have heard this, the more AI exists in the world and the more it sends anodyne messages into the sphere where then it sucks it up again, it's an echo chamber of blandness. It was bad a month ago. It's going to be worse 5 months from now because it's only feeding on its own detritus.
Yeah.
All the more reason to adopt it as a skill. And so, like, I used to teach to the management training program at Saatchi and Saatchi in both New York and London. I used to teach young creative people how to present their work because it wasn't enough to have a good idea. People had to be able to see it when it's on the page, not when it's fully realized. And if people were good at recognizing great ideas just from your description, then we would all run movie studios because we would all know what's going to be a hit. But that's not how it is it? You have to hear an idea come to life. When a young person has a great creative idea, they need to defend it with the best possible description of it. And that's drama. And that's wrong footing someone. And often it's funny. And it usually begins with an insight, a story about something that happened to them that revealed something they weren't aware of before. When you watch Mad Men, I don't know how many of your listeners, I suspect quite a lot of them have seen it.
Yes. The
Don Draper character, what makes him good is that he can go into a room and light people's interest up. There's a very famous quote, I think it's Socrates, which is, students are not vessels to be filled, they are torches to be lit. And what that means in today's world is, don't burden people with a bunch of bullet points or facts. Those are the things that fill the vessel, memorizing facts and dates. No. What you need to do instead is ignite in someone an interest to learn more. And this is our stock in trade as marketers and advertisers, was, can I make you curious to hear more? And our one-time chairman used to say that the most important thing you can do in any advertisement is provoke in someone, would I want to see it again? And more importantly, would I want to share it?
Yes.
In other words, do I want to put my imprimatur on this when it leaves and I give it to somebody else? That's proof that you've succeeded, is they pass it on to their friends. Well, they're not going to pass along to their friends a long list of bullet points and attributes and saying this does 20% better at this and 30% less of that. No. What they want to do is they want to be thrilled by how that might fit into their life. And I have an example of that, by the way, if you're game.
Sure, go for it.
So proudly, I hired these two gals to be copywriter and art director team. And they were very young. And we were in a circumstance where we were trying to advertise a minivan. And this was the Toyota Sienna. And the Toyota Sienna, this was a new feature at the time. You could hit the key fob and it would either open or close all of the automatic doors. And in a focus group, they heard this verbatim. They didn't hear a lot of facts that were interesting to them. What they heard was a woman express, sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the whole weight of the family. And that stimulated an idea in their minds. And the commercial they came back with was that there was this woman who drives up in front of her house late at night, and everybody else is asleep in the car. So her husband's asleep, her infant is asleep, her toddler is asleep. So what she does is, and all the bags in the back, she opens all the doors, with the key fob, and then she gets out and she takes the little infant upstairs. Well, the house is on a hill, so she has to climb this long staircase to get to the front door and, stairs into the house to get up to the bedrooms. Then she comes back and she gets the little toddler who's fast asleep, his little legs dangling, as she takes him up the stairs. Then she comes back and realizes her husband's about a good 260. So he's a big man And the next thing you see is her carrying him up the stairs like a little baby. And as she gets to the top of the stairs, she turns around to the Sienna and she hits the key fob and all of the doors close. And it just says, push button automatic doors on the new Toyota Sienna. Okay, so here's what the ad did so well. Subconsciously, even if women have not had that specific experience, they feel seen.
Yeah.
Because they go, yeah, that's what it's like. That's
Yeah.
what it's like. You think I'm selling you automatic doors? No. What I'm selling you is a company who understands what it's like to be you.
Yeah.
And that provokes in someone friendship and an acknowledgement that the company cares enough about you to notice what it's like to be you. So you can believe fairly convincingly that there are going to be a bunch of things like that in the vehicle that are going to make it more convenient, and they're going to make it more fun, and they're going to, by the way, I'm just in the tank for Toyota. I'm a huge believer in that brand. And you would know that there's anybody who's in the game of advertising a product, they either become, they absolutely grow to hate it, or they just become fanatically religious about it.
Yeah.
And that was me, because every time you think they're going to betray your trust, they don't. Every opportunity they have to chisel someone, they try not to.
Yeah.
And Toyota to me was a really good example of, they really deeply cared. Everybody on the assembly line deeply cared that the product was going to be flawless. That whatever it may look like, I promise you that nut is screwed in correctly. Like they had a religion of quality at the brand where everybody was in. Everybody had bought in. And it was fabulous that they didn't violate the ideals of the people that were assembling the vehicles. And that's a story. That's a story. Just that every day that those people go out into the world, the people that manufacture them, they believe. And that's very persuasive.
To get everyone singing from the same choir
Yeah.
is a very difficult challenge. And when you
Is
do,
it?
it's pure
Right?
magic. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, have you experienced, oh, I'm sorry for interrupting, Kelly.
Go ahead.
So have you ever had this experience? You'll go into a company and the chairman, the president, she will have very, very high ideals and she'll express what it's all about.
Yeah.
And then the very youngest and brand newest of the people in the company will be singing the same song. And then there is this giant, Cretaceous, Cambrian, these layers in between who go, yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
And you've got a real problem when the only real believers are the brand newbies and the person at the top.
Yeah.
And so the mark of a great company is when the people in the middle are preaching the evangel. Then okay, they must live this, because the people that are in a position to be the most cynical are the ones, like the United States Marine Corps, those drill instructors are true believers. They will say, my beloved Corps, I will not let you in unless you live up to the ideals of my beloved Corps. And you go, okay, something about this is working.
Well, let's take this one step further, because obviously persuasion and human psychology is a huge part of what we do in marketing
Yeah.
and advertising and selling. And you've spent over 30 years studying why people say yes. And you've actually created 25 secrets to help professionals maximize their persuasive power. I don't want you to list all 25
Yeah.
here today.
No.
But at a fundamental level, what is happening in someone's brain when a story persuades them? And this can lead into the whole Zig Ziglar, people buy on emotion, justifying logic, and part of the conversation that we were having earlier.
Yeah, everybody that goes through the world has their radar up for threats and
Yeah.
danger. And part of what makes a human being feel good and safe is the idea that they are not alone. And so what will persuade people is the feeling that you are on their team, that with you, they're looking out for you just as you are looking out for them. That this is not me separating you from your money. This is you making an investment of something you can believe in. Okay, now, how do you do that? Well, the example that I will use perpetually is that you have to tell stories that are uplifting, that are positive, that make people feel good about themselves and about the future. And an example that I use is that when I was in my car one day and I made a U-turn that was far too close to the curb, and I ripped the sidewalls out of my left-hand tires. Bang, bang, 2 flats. Great. Because you're stuck if you've got 2 flats because you've only got 1 spare, so I'm screwed. And then all of a sudden I notice if I can just limp 100 feet, there's a tire store. Oh, okay, so I'm experiencing these mixed emotions, right? I have to pay for 2 new tires, but this could have been a lot worse. So I'm sitting in the waiting room, balancing between these 2 extremes, and I'm in the waiting room with 2 women. Now, they look like they're exactly the same age. They look like went to the same hairstylist. They're dressed approximately the same. I swear to you, if you'd put them in a police lineup, I couldn't have told you which was which. But one woman on this side and the other on that side, and I'm in the middle in this waiting room. And the first woman is on her phone, and she is complaining loudly about a bad experience that she had in a restaurant. And she was incensed because she felt like the waiter got her order wrong twice. And she thinks the second time was on purpose. And so she is complaining loudly to the manager about how, this was happening. And the manager refused to fire the server, and there was a big kerfuffle, and maybe a mimosa got thrown. And eventually, she's now on the phone complaining about this, saying that she's going to leave a scathing Yelp review and probably put up posters on the telephone poles near the restaurant to dissuade people from using it. Okay, so she's really pissed. And then finally she ends her call, and she goes on about her day. Not 15 seconds later, the woman on the other side of me leans into me and says, I had a very good experience at a restaurant this morning. I was looking out the window, having my coffee, and there was this cute girl that came along with a big dog, and she was going on a walk. And she sees this old gentleman waiting to cross the street. And in the time that he has been there, he's actually cycled through the green twice because it's a very big boulevard, and he looks like he doesn't think he's going to make it all the way across. So she takes him by the hand, and when it turns green, she takes him across the street. All the while, the big dog is patrolling in front of the cars to make sure nobody gets any fancy ideas. And they got to the other side, and instead of going their separate ways, they have this short conversation. And then they walked off arm in arm. Isn't that wonderful? And I went, and I said in a very loud voice, yes, that is wonderful. Now, who would you rather spend the day with? It's one woman is farting her grievances into our lives in the elevator, and the other woman is improving my day by giving me the sense that maybe there's hope. Yeah. Maybe the younger generation cares about the older generation. Maybe people do things for no selfish reasons. Now, consider how persuasive the second woman's story is. I am completely dissuaded from the first woman's story that she's telling the truth. I don't believe a word of it. On the other hand, I'm willing to accept whatever exaggerations the second woman is telling me to fit the narrative of what I'm hoping is true. Yeah. I've got an image in my mind of what the young woman looks like. I can tell you what the older gentleman was dressed in. I filled in all the detail because I wanted it to be true. And this is the secret to selling something to someone is you and I both know nobody will buy anything they don't want to buy. Because if they don't want to buy it, any excuse will do. On the other hand, if they're in, what's a couple extra bucks? They're emotionally invested in making it happen. They want to buy it, so any excuse will do. Right? So a story that makes you feel like there's hope and, that things are maybe going to work out and I have a role. And if I come back for more from this company, I leave feeling better than I came into the room with. And if you were going to ask me, you said like the 25 tips for persuading. Well, here's number one, 100%. Life gets so much easier when people like you. And likable people tell uplifting stories.
Yes.
They make people smile. Saying like the party, Do you want to spend time with somebody who's gorgeous and handsome, or do you want to spend time with somebody who makes you laugh? Come on. That's not even a contest. People get bored of beauty so fast. They really do. Especially men. Oh, man, men are fickle.
I wanted to get into this idea of using emotion in storytelling and why people why people don't do that, and they're kind of hardwired to persuade with logic first. Can you just kind of untangle that?
Yeah, well,
and you did that already in terms of, people forget facts and remember stories, especially the moral with your turtle story, right? But I think some people tend to confuse, you can have emotion, you can have data. 56% of women will get cancer by the age of 60 if they don't do this. So what are those pressure points that trigger people? They're not stats. They're people stories. They're usually stories of individuals, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to walk us through?
Very famous quote attributed to Joseph Stalin, which was, a million deaths is a statistic. A single death is a tragedy. When you are talking about an individual, the same as I was saying, like I can tell you what the old man was wearing in the crosswalk when that woman was telling the story. I had populated the story with all of the necessary detail because a part of me wanted it to be true. Let's go to your cancer statistic. Until I know who the cancer is affecting, I'm not really listening. But as soon as I find out that your favorite aunt is the one with cancer and she's only 50, it is heartbreaking. And I will not let that happen to my own mother. You become galvanized because all of a sudden you care. I saw this marvelous, marvelous video. I think it was a school in Pakistan. And this little girl was such a live wire. And her father, they had this game that they would play where you can tell that he would tell her he loves her many times as she's departing. And she would play the game of saying, enough, enough. But then she would come back for a little more. And he would say, I love you. And then she would go, oh, you're don't keep saying it. And she would run 3 feet. And then she would come back to the open door for more. Imagine if she had been one of the girls killed in a school bombing.
Yeah.
You would be outraged beyond capacity. The emotions they create a level of understanding that data never breaches. And you need to personalize things. Oftentimes people's empathy is not triggered until something has happened to them. And then they finally understand.
Sure.
Deeply empathetic people, it doesn't have to happen to them for them to understand. And this is why it's so important that we communicate with emotion so that finally it triggers comprehension in some people. Let's think about the way that dogs operate in the world, why people love dogs. So imagine all of the things that are wrong with dogs, and there are a lot of things that are on the con side of owning a pet, like a dog. One, you have to walk them constantly. You have to be out of the house with them all the time. You have to pick up their poop, put it in a bag, find a place to throw it out. They shed on everything. The number of times I have been in literally in a presentation and seen dog hair on myself. When they're tiny, they pee on everything, they chew everything up. And they'll leave you a present in the wrong places. And they cost a fortune at the vet. If you go on a trip, you have to board them or you have to, take them with you and buy another seat or what have you. And God help you if they bite someone. And then, after you've poured all the sacrifice and all of this into a dog, they die. And I will promise you, that's going to be among the saddest days of your life. So my question to people is, why do people bother?
Yeah.
Why do they love dogs so much? And the answer is, dogs love you first. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for you to be the first mover. They don't judge you. They're always happy to see you. Some of them, when you are attacked, they don't even think about the danger. They will throw themselves at it. But my favorite thing about dogs is that they don't look at you and wonder if they could have done better. But The important thing is that when dogs love you first, when they give you that unconditional, they just are the first mover, it automatically triggers reciprocity in you.
Yeah.
When they love you, you love them back. And this is a lesson for all brands. Every time you produce a product, it should be a love letter to its customers. It should be filled not with just the right amount to squeak by. Do you know, shrinkflation, something that used to be this big in the bag, same size bag, now it's that big. So
Yeah.
this is what happens with private equity. As soon as private equity takes over Jersey Mike's, the amount of meat in the sandwich goes like that. It's not a love letter to your customers. It's a finger to your customers. They are going to squeeze the last bit of juice out of this before they dump it on the bank that lent them the money. And to me, that's not a brand. That's a con. And all of us, in any time we're communicating anything to our clients, you have to start with the premise of, I'm going to love you first. And if you don't return that, that's not my problem. I tried. I don't wait for my clients to prove that they're worthy of me. I'm the one who makes the first move. And, there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy for a lot of clients. When you treat them as worthy, they become worthy. The Pygmalion effect is when you set an expectation for a student or for a police officer, when you set an expectation for a Marine, this is how you behave. They will live up to your expectation. You set an expectation for how we are in this company. We do not tolerate sexual harassment. We do not tolerate chiseling our customers. We do not cheat on our taxes. That's not how we do things here. When you set that expectation and you live by it, people that walk in the door, they will live by it. The Pygmalion effect. Well, this is the same thing about how you can be persuasive by being the sort of person that sets an expectation for your own conduct by being a first mover. And then you don't expect somebody else to be honest first. You're honest first. And this first mover status earns you a certain emotional response, which is people feel good about you and they feel reassured and they feel like, oh, okay. The story they're telling is somebody who has principles. Now, when it comes to, again, 25 rules of persuasion, it's the number one thing you know about me is I'm trying to earn your affection for me. I'm trying to conduct myself in such a way that our friendship is earned. Life gets so much easier when people like you. So I'm going to make myself likable. And then, goes from there. Then not only do I tell stories that are uplifting, but let me go one extra tip, which is part of what makes them uplifting is that they are fun to listen to, they're touching. By the time you get to the end of the story, I feel emotionally affected. I will often tell stories that had made me cry, things that have happened to me that are so beautiful that I just go, that was unbelievable. And in a very reassuring way, once we have seen the amount of sacrifice human beings are capable of, and the sweetness that they'll do unprovoked, or the generosity that they'll share and show, unprovoked, it's very reassuring and soul filling. And so when you tell a story that has that kind of uplifting quality, that it reignites your belief in the future, you're giving a gift. And that gift is you're going to be memorable and you're going to be interpreted like a dog. Oh, they decided to make this the best meeting of the day by telling me a story that was entertaining and meaningful and touched my emotions. That's a few. I got more.
Well, let's move over to the fundamentals of storytelling for advertising. And you have three pillars of a compelling story, because that might add some additional insight into the process.
Well, a story has to have a hero, a protagonist, and that hero needs to want something. She needs something. So let's say, for example, if we go back to the example of that Sienna commercial, the mother of the family, she's definitely a heroic. She needs something. She needs to get her sleeping family off to bed. But there's an obstacle. There's a challenge. There's something standing in her way. That her husband weighs 280. And so you are very interested in the story because you're going, how is she going to resolve this? Well, she exceeds our expectations, as many mothers do. She is vastly stronger than we first took her for. That is how a lot of women are. They are underestimated. And so in the commercial, she is like, yeah, we didn't think she could do it, but she could. And that's Toyota saying, the hero of this story is a woman who has exceeded her expectations and she thinks nothing of it. This is not surprising to her, is it? And so if you were going to say, go in and you're going to present that idea to people that are going to need to pay for its production, you have to make sure they know what they're getting before they hear the idea. So you're going to tell them, this is a story about a woman who has probably been underestimated her whole life, who carries more weight in her family than you think she's capable of, who is the bedrock and the foundation and the glue that holds that family together. And you know what? She doesn't expect a medal at the end of it. This to her is just a Tuesday. And then you present the idea, and all of a sudden when they get to the end of it, they go, wow, that was a work of art. Because it lived up to everything that young woman told me it was going to say. It said all of that. And it said none of that. It didn't say any of that in bullet points, but it said all of that in the story. So you set up a protagonist, somebody who wants something, somebody who's heroic in some way, or they learned something by the end. They want something, and then there's a challenge. And now you're trying to figure out, will they succeed in meeting that challenge? And then when you get to the end, you're asking yourself, how did that affect them? Well, it was actually really important that the woman isn't affected at all. This changes nothing, because that's her life. And doesn't that remind you of somebody? It reminds you of you, doesn't it? And because it reminds you of you, you now know, oh, they understand me. They knew that would remind me of me. How do they know? Because they see me, because they see my story every day. That camera was them looking at my life. So in any story, fundamentally, you've got to have somebody who's a protagonist, who wants something. And at the end, they have faced a challenge or some obstacle and they've overcome it, and they learned something, or we learned something from their journey. And if you look at, say, there's a scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indiana Jones walks into a market and he's looking for Marion. He's trying to find this woman that he's trying to save. He walks into a market, and all of a sudden, all of the denizens of the market separate, and there is this enormous man with swinging an enormous scimitar. And Indy's response is, I'm not going to sword fight this guy. And he just pulls his pistol, shoots the man in the head. And then he turns very exhausted. And so the story is about, I don't have time for this. Right? It's like, what's the story? Enormous challenge. Oh, for God's sake. I don't have time for this shit. And it was a miniature movie in less than 40 seconds, less than 30. This is a miniature movie. Man looking for woman to save, finds this enormous obstacle standing in his way. Bang. Okay, on to the next challenge. It's funny. It makes us laugh, even though somebody got shot in the head. We're laughing because it's like, yeah, I don't have time for this. Anyway, but there are intricacies within a story. Like sometimes the punchline isn't the punchline. Sometimes that challenge wasn't the real challenge, and so on. But in the end, it's really just Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Woman is trying to get something. Woman faces challenge. In overcoming the challenge, 3, she is now the hero of this tale. She has survived, and now she is changed by the experience. And let's talk about like how when we tell stories about ourselves, there's a very, very important lesson. If this was the only thing I told anything to your audience, it would be never make yourself the hero of your stories. Don't do that because you become not credible. As soon as somebody presents themselves as heroic, all of a sudden you have not aroused the admiration of your audience, but rather the skepticism. Man, I caught a fish this big. No, you didn't. Now I'm dubious that you caught a fish at all, to say nothing of the size. And in the same way that the woman complaining about the experience she had in the restaurant, now I'm starting to doubt that the waiter was the bad guy of the story. Now I'm dubious about all of this. Even if you were the hero of your story, cast somebody else in the role of hero. Tell the story as though you observed the behavior of this person. And I got a friend, Matt, who is a glorious storyteller, magnificently successful in business. There was a thing that he did that was very generous, and it was a beautiful story about his generosity. When he told the story, he told it as though it was somebody else, knowing that if he told it about himself, nobody would believe it. And by the way, anybody that brags about themselves, that's, huh?
Yeah.
So instead, he told the story about somebody else and how he had observed this. And now he gets to have his cake and eat it too, because he gets to tell about the incident and he gets to say, this is what I admire. And I, sitting next to him, knowing it was him, I go, that's pretty clever. So he earns my admiration as somebody who was behind the scenes as well. And people that are selfless that way, or they're not telling the story in order to aggrandize themselves or inflate their sense of importance. What they do is they're telling a story to me as well as telling a story to the others, which is, I'm not the type of person that brags about good things that I've done. Now, where does the suspicion lie? How many of these stories that he tells about other people are actually him doing these really cool things? So you're now leaning on the positive side of that ledger. But anybody that goes onto LinkedIn and says, so proud of my team for having won Flange Maker of the Year, but then they feature a picture of themselves, it's like, or so humbled to have won this great award. No, you can use the word humbled, but you're not using it right. What you really mean to say is, I am so proud of myself that I wanted everybody in the universe to know that I won this award. That's what you're really saying. And cloaking it in false humility only makes you look like a bigger tool. Because, bro, how dumb do you think we are? Really? We're on LinkedIn. You think I haven't seen this 100 times from some tool who wants us to see her picture or his picture? Now, you got to be real careful about bragging on LinkedIn. Do yourself a favor. There should be one purpose to go on LinkedIn if you're going to talk about somebody did something. It's to celebrate the achievement of somebody on your team. And I don't mean put your picture on it. I mean celebrate them, to say they did this good thing and I have noticed it and I think there are great things ahead for this person. Just do yourself a favor. Use the commons to be generous and nice to other people. Or if you're going to post something, make it of some value. Did I improve people's day by putting this here? Who was this really about? Was this about me? Or was this, hey, I'm sharing this in order to uplift and make people smile or make them feel something? Or, oftentimes you'll notice that really good chief executives will often tell stories about something that they did wrong. They'll do it for the purpose. Well, there's a bunch of underlying purposes, but they'll do it to say, I learned from this and I will not repeat this mistake. I learned from this and I don't want you to repeat a mistake I made. I learned from this and we are a learning organization, and it is okay to own your mistakes in this company. Because when you own a mistake, you will never make that mistake again. We're a learning organization. That is a way that a CEO can be humble and yet at the same time benefit us all by sharing that story. There's another thing that being a little bit humble will do, which is by humanizing yourself as the chief, that now you're a human being. Nobody is expecting you to be perfect. Now you can admit mistakes. There's a wonderful Syrian aphorism, and it goes, if you are on the wrong road and you are heading the wrong way, no matter how far you've gone, turn around now. So I'm not going to let a bad thing that I've done get worse. I'm going to own up to it. And I expect all of you to do the same.
Yeah.
You can see how powerful that is when a president says, I made a mistake. I sent us down this road. That was not the right thing to do. We are turning around and going back. It is my fault, but I will not double down on an error. I will not waste more of our time and more of our money. I won't put you in a position of having to pay perpetually for my errors. Now what happens to the middle? That cynical middle of your company. They go, oh, he owned his mistake. The expectation is, if I'm in a meeting with this guy, he's going to expect me to do the same. Because he's demonstrated how bulletproof he is once he's admitted his error. Oh, I get it. And to all those middle managers, they now have permission to say to all of their underlings, I expect you to admit and own your mistakes. The president does it. We all do it. Okay, having had experience with Toyota, been to many, many of their factories, and you talk to the people building the cars, they will often encounter a flaw more than once. It will come down the line and they'll see something wrong. And they'll pull the Kanban line. They'll stop the line in order to run this problem to ground and get it fixed for once and for all. You think they're upset? Do you think that they're all angry? No, not at Toyota. They're happy. Why would they be happy? Because that now that we're going to fix that, that's one less problem that this car will have. This car is this much closer to perfect. They practically celebrate when they find these things because they go, I know that's a mistake we'll never make again. They're a learning organization. It's what makes them so formidable. They're not perfect, but they're on the road. They're going that way. So I can either, as the president, stand up in front of everybody and tell them how wonderful I am, which is not credible, or I can say, can I tell you something that happened to me? I was rude to a guy that was parking cars. I was mad at myself the second it came out of my mouth. But I didn't stop, and I didn't turn around, and I didn't apologize. And 4 hours later on the golf course, I'm still angry with myself. I literally left the 12th tee, and I walked all the way back to apologize to that person. And then I felt okay. I want you to remember, no matter who you are in this company, if you say something untoward towards somebody else, apologize now. Apologize now, or you will carry it for the rest of the week. And, you know, that kind of story is meaningful because they've actually benefited me from the guilt and shame they felt. And it's a mistake I'll learn from without having to have that mistake. Like, I have had to apologize to people on customer service calls. And the only way I was able to recover is by leaving that. You know how they'll do those surveys afterwards? Like, I actually had to stick around and do the survey to give them a clean bill of health as my my penance.
Sure.
Instead of saying 9 Hail Marys, I had to go back and do the survey. But in the telling of the story, I've humbled myself, but not really. Not really. What I've demonstrated is I'm a learning person who's imperfect, but going through the world with the intention of getting better. So when you're telling a story, don't make yourself the hero. Rather, be the person who learned something.
And this is related to noblesse oblige, right?
Yeah. Noblesse oblige. Yeah, the French,
I said it back.
I'm not sure. Well, Either way, you got the idea, which is there was a time, the time of kings, when a French nobleman, noblesse oblige, was, look, if you're going to get all the money and you're going to own all the land, you owe the peasants a surviving life. You cannot push them to the point where all of a sudden you're on the end of a guillotine or on a pike. You got to recognize you have to be good to people sufficiently that they feel good about you being the lord of the manor.
Yeah.
Because man, as soon as they start to grumble, do you know how much of a threat your life is right now? They could kill you. If you make them angry enough, they will kill you. And in today's world, they're not going to kill you. Well, actually they might. No, but what I mean is, but they'll kill you symbolically. They'll find a way to undermine you.
Yeah.
You're going to have 1,000 eyes to stop all the people you've pissed off from taking it out on you at just the right moment. We went on we were about to do an international pitch. We were headed to Seoul, Korea. We were having to get on a plane in New York, fly halfway around the world to Seoul. And I left my computer, the one with the presentation on it. And this was before slide sharing, before you could just, I left my computer at my desk. We're getting in the van and we're not early to this flight. We are racing to the airport. And the cleaning woman comes out with my backpack and says, "You forgot your computer." Because this was a late night thing. This was 10 p.m. or something. Now, I knew that woman, and I'm not saying I had been exquisitely good to that woman, but I had never pissed her off enough so that she said, "Good luck with the show." Right? She had not found her moment to throw a torpedo in my hull.
Yeah.
And that's noblesse oblige. Is you got to make sure that you are good enough to people where they don't look for ways to put you into the ground. And this is part of storytelling, is floating through the world telling a story about yourself, which is, I am looking for ways to improve other people's day. I am conscious that there are other people in the world, and I am wondering what it's like to be you. And I wonder if I can improve your day. And you'd be surprised at how much better you feel about yourself when you leave the house to be a ladder or a lifeboat or a shepherd and not an aggressive douche who's it's all about you. There's a strange efficiency to being generous to people. You think it's going out of your way? No, man, it's lubricating the gears. This engine's going to run smoother and cooler if you are nice to people. If you make a habit of it, if you're on the lookout for it, if that becomes your vibe, like vibration of energy, it tends to come back at you. Like if you go to the doctor and the doctor is trying to get a real sense of how much stress there is in your life. Why? Why is the doctor interested in your stress? Because stress will kill you. Walking around with a guilty conscience is deadly. Loneliness is deadly. They say that loneliness is like smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Like that's how bad it is in older people. How do you get lonely? You get lonely by not going out into the world looking for ways to improve the lives of others. That's what leads to loneliness, is not being the dog that makes the first move. That when you are looking for ways to improve the lives of others, when all of a sudden it has a kind of a magnetism to it. And this is all part of storytelling, is, as Yuval Harari would say, the most important stories we tell are the ones we tell ourselves about ourselves. Who am I? I saw this wonderful Korean series. It's called My Friends for Me or something like that. Anyway, it's about these older people in Korea and the lives they have as older people. And as you can imagine, older people in Korea have sacrificed a lot for their children. I mean, oh man. People in their 70s in Korea now, what do you think they went through in their youth? It was a lot of sacrifice. And so now they very much resent people that are telling them what to do or telling them how to be. And I saw this wonderful line from this woman who is being told either by her husband or by her son, like how she should behave. And she says, I am the protagonist of my movie. I will not be told to be a supporting character. And I went, ooh, whoever wrote that had that experience. Think about how powerful that is. You are the protagonist of your movie, Kelly. You are the one who controls how this plot goes, and you're the one who decides how this movie ends. How do you want that third act to go?
Yes.
As soon as you start to go, oh, I'm telling a story to myself about what my life is. If you leave the house like a douchebag, that's how you want your movie to go? You're the villain of this movie? Or I'm not going to leave the house like a douche. I'm going to go to the restaurant. I'm going to be the best part of that server's day. I am going to go into this meeting with a client, and I guarantee you this is going to be the most fun they have all day. Like, you know how cool it is when you really make an effort in a meeting, when the room has been visually prepared, when it's got cool visuals everywhere, and when it smells like something when you walk in. That's what realtors do, right? They make it smell like baking bread so that even though there's no furniture in the room, ooh, it smells good in here. You think they go, oh, this is a great realtor. They've made it smell like bread. Or do you think they go, something about that place I really liked? Because it's all, smells are operating subconsciously. And then it doesn't just smell good in the meeting, which we used to make it smell like vanilla. It doesn't just smell good. There's music when they walk in. Yeah. And it sets a mood when they walk in. And they walk out on certain meetings. Or there's a whole thing of sound effects so that when you would get to the end of the presentation, you would hit this like crescendo of trumpets, ta-da, and you go, and that's it. And you would have something in front of them. You would have a snack, but not just any snack. I don't want to give them sugar because I don't want them crashing in 20 minutes. I would give them like espresso beans, or give them coffee, very good coffee, or I would have, like cashews, because cashews are their protein is going to, keep you engaged for a while. And then there's a place setting, and what's at the place setting? It's got little toys, or it's got something provocative in front of them. Why? Because whatever you've put in front of them is on theme for the meeting. Yes. It's going to reinforce whatever you were there to sell them. It's a gift. It's some small gift. It's thoughtful. It's personalized. It's something that they're going to want to keep. Why would you go to all that trouble? Because I am 100% determined that when you leave this meeting, this is the only thing you're thinking about for the rest of the day. Where if anybody asks you how the meeting went, you say, well, we didn't approve the work, but I love those guys. And if you do that, if you set a tone for every time you come to see us or when we come to see you, it's the best part of your day, they kind of owe you one. When they see the young creative team is crestfallen that you didn't buy the work, they feel bad. They feel like, oh, this dog did this great trick for me, and I'm not going to take it out for a walk? What kind of person am I? So they owe you one. I've had clients tell me, I didn't want to say yes that one, but I owed you one. I'm like, fantastic. Although I never did work that I didn't think was going to be good for them. We just disagreed on a matter of taste. Or
one of the creative directors I worked with at Gray said that you need to think about the fact that when you go visit a client, that it's the best part of their day. They're in meetings all day, and this is the best part of their day. And you need to come to them, offering them a present. And the gift is creative based on their brand and what it represents. And you need to tell that story in such a way so they are receiving the gift in a magical way and accepting it in a magical way. And I always think of that.
You said a mouthful. accepting it in a magical way. Okay, you just put your finger on persuasion 100%, which is you presented it in a magical way and they accepted it in a magical way. Or put another way, it was not rational. It was magical. It was emotional. They accepted it. They accepted it in the spirit in which it was offered because it was a gift. The creative was a gift. It solved a problem beautifully, artfully. Can you imagine how much fun it must be to be John Williams, I don't know if he's still alive, and to be able to present to George Lucas, here's the theme song I wrote for your movie.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much joy there would be associated with, an artist who turns in a brilliant performance in a movie and then goes, how's that? Like, there you go. And the director's going,
There's your gift.
Because sometimes on movie sets or in commercial shoots, the crew will applaud at the end of a performance. And not at the end of the day. They'll go, that mofo, wow, that was something. That was beautiful. I've been on commercial shoots where the crew applauded. And how must you feel as an actor when you and I'll tell you, you know how you don't earn applause? Take 26. That's how you don't earn applause. You earn applause at take 3 was brilliant. Moving on, the happiest words in any key grip's life, in any lighting man's life. Moving on, because they got it. And there's only one way you're going to get it. It's because you came prepared. You were rehearsed. You had internalized it. You couldn't wait to share it. And commercial shoots were, I don't know if they still are, but they were the most expensive movies, second for second, dollar for second, of any production on earth. To shoot a commercial was the most expensive film you were going to ever burn. I've been on shoots where they were spending $10,000 an hour before they got to post. And so some actor shows up unprepared and we're burning 10 grand an hour. I mean, now that I think of it, there were probably shoots that were $500,000 and you were like, you're burning more than 10. And you showed up unprepared, or you showed up excited and ready to go to share what you've got to go. And the director is like, I will put this actor in everything I am ever going to shoot. You notice that, like Wes Anderson has his people. They just show up in movie after movie. You think it's because they showed up like, or because they knew that the audience, how did you phrase it? You said accepted with magic. How did you say it?
Yeah,
But
I mean, the whole thing has to be magical. What you're presenting is the gift is magic, and they will accept this gift.
Okay, so you need to copyright that and trademark that.
Well, this actually is really good because it leads us to the next topic. So I'm telling you a story about an art director that said something to me, right? And so what you've said is that the storyteller, not the source, earns the credit, like an actor who delivers a memorable line while the writer goes uncredited. And that was a perfect example of I'm telling you a story of a creative director that's done something, but if I use that story as part of the introduction to me and what it is that I do, then I get credit. So some other examples of this, which kind of drive me crazy a little bit, but I get the idea. Brene Brown loves to tell the story of Roosevelt, the man in the arena, right? And if you're not the man in the arena with me and you're not in there and doing all the same stuff that I'm doing, then I'm not going to take your criticism. She didn't write it, but she takes the credit because she told it. Mel Robbins does this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 blast off idea as if it was a rocket launch to get you to take action on things. Again, not her idea. She just took an idea that already exists and ran with it. So, but you agree that if you're the one who says it, just like an actor says a line, then you own it.
You will notice that really great actors, they're very generous with their praise of the script. Like the Bad ones, not so much. You'll often see an actor complain about a script, and I go, I have no time for you. You know, they tilled the soil, they fertilized it, they planted the seeds, they were there to get, brush the insects off, and now you're complaining about all the hard work that went into that before. Gee, I have no time for you. On the other hand, a Daniel Day-Lewis, a Meryl Streep. Have you ever noticed how generous Meryl Streep is with her praise of the script? That woman could read the phone book and make it compelling. And yet, you know why? Because she understands that this is a craft that I love, and I wouldn't be able to do it except that somebody created a character that I can inhabit. She enjoys the whole thing. She loves the whole thing, and she loves the people that make it possible. I believe the reason that you get credit for it is in proportion to the fact that you not own the sentiment, that you be generous with who it came from.
Yes.
That you say, this is meaningful to me. When I came across it, it changed me. It came to me from this. Let me describe to you what they said. The perverse part of it, the paradox, is that the more credit you give somebody else, the more you own it. It's true. And it doesn't mean that people don't give the writer who you wanted to credit. No, they do. It's just that you also appreciate the fact that you're behaving like the audience that's listening to the story right now. You're listening to the story with them. You're sitting right next to them saying, I want to tell it. It's almost like you're saying, hey, watch this. Watch this. You see what they did? Isn't that great? It's the woman in the diner saying to me, I saw something today. And when she's telling it to me, how do you think I'm filling in the detail of the old man? I'm sitting right next to her in the diner.
Yeah.
I'm right next to her. So of course she gets complete credit for it, because the two of us, it was like standing at the rim of the Grand Canyon. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it really is everything they tell you it's going to be. You can scarcely believe it's real.
Yeah.
You're standing there going, oh my God. Now I was a Boy Scout, and we had a tour bus. So I'm a Boy Scout, big troop of boys. We all run to the lip. We all watch each other and everything. We're all looking at it. Little boys were going, wow, I'm going to climb down. Okay. Now I'm back pulling rocks out of my boots, and I'm looking at other people watching the rim. And I see an old guy go up to the rim, and he looks out over the beauty, and what does he do? He turns around looking for someone to share it with. It's not the same if there's no one there to share it with. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not as much fun. It's not as beautiful. You need somebody there to appreciate it with you. When a Meryl Streep or a Ben Kingsley, when they brag about how brilliant the script was, Anthony Hopkins would do that too. When they would brag about how great the script was, what they were doing was they were at the lip of the Grand Canyon, and they're saying, yes, the Hannibal Lecter character is fantastic, but let's the two of us appreciate the beauty of this, where it really came from. It's not just being selfless, it's actually giving the listener an additional gift of, tangent. Have you ever noticed how great salesmen love to be sold? They love a good pitch. I saw this with car dealers. A car dealer loves a great pitch because they know how hard it is. They know how hard it is to persuade somebody who's on the fence. And so as long as you try, as long as you've prepped the room and you've made the presentation a gift, they want to buy it. They're kind of like, yeah, okay. Okay. And so it's all the more reason why you need to prep the room and make some effort. Make an effort. Prove that you cared enough, that you got dressed for the date.
You've said great storytellers zig when everyone else zags. What do you mean by this?
Well, a great storyteller is essentially giving you a gift as opposed to asking for something in return. So they've decided to try to influence your mood in a way. Have you ever heard the aphorism that's, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice.
Yeah.
Now, if you really dig into the meaning of it, it's that If I've come to you for advice, it means automatically that I respect your opinion. It means I'm sharing with you a situation I'm in and hoping you can give me some guidance on how I can make it work. There's going to be a point in the story where the listener begins to identify with you. They go, well, if I was in your shoes, I would do this and that and the other thing. And because you're coming to them for advice and not money, what's happening is they're open to listening to the idea because they know that you're not trying to sell them. They just want your opinion. And there's a point during this exchange when they go, actually, that's not a bad idea. That's a pretty good idea, in fact. Do I like this person? Actually, I kind of do. Do I trust them? Well, yeah, because they could have come with their hand out, but they didn't. They just wanted to know. You see the dynamic at play. That's zigging when everybody else would zag, which is to come in and go, I need $10 billion to do my new social media dating app that's based entirely off pheromones. And although that might actually work, but when you've come in with your hand out, you're trying to sell them, which means you see them as a source of money, not as a friend, not as a. That in the movie The Godfather, the very first scene is this guy asking the Godfather for a favor, and he says, you didn't come to me in friendship. I came to you years ago, and you rebuffed my friendship, and now you want a favor. What have I done to insult you? And that's how we all are. The effectiveness of that scene is that we all sort of identify with, we're not all organized crime, but we all do understand, not everybody wants to know you until it's time to cash in a chip. And you didn't earn that. Well, zigging when everybody else zags is going into the world with the intention of giving a gift before you ask for something in return.
Got it.
And so a story that uplifts, that tells somebody, this is what it's like to be me, or that I appreciate what it's like to be you, or, I did something foolish, and I'd like to tell you about this thing that I did that's foolish, because I think you'll see the benefit of knowing this without having to gone through the experience yourself. There's an old, there's an old cowboy saying, which was, there's a few people that learn from books and a couple more that learn from watching others. And the rest of us just have to piss on the electric fence for ourselves. And telling a good story is helping people understand, helping people not piss on the electric fence. So if let's look at an advertisement from Procter & Gamble for the 2014 Sochi Olympics, Winter Olympics. Brilliant piece of advertising. The backstory on it was that the Sochi Olympics' first pod of advertising, opening ceremony's first pod of advertising, it's the most expensive real estate in the whole thing. It's the beachfront property. And so naturally, at P&G, who had bought the first pod, they had bought 60 seconds. All the vice presidents of the various brands, all of the brand managers are VPs, and they come as competitors to get that spot. So Bounty paper towels is next to diapers, next to Pampers, and they're next to Duracell batteries, and they all want that first spot. So they've all gone out and they've gotten their agency to do the ads that they can present, so they earn that spot. And A.G. Lafley, who was the chairman at the time, or the president, he's like, I can't believe the way that you people are coming at this, trying to sell people paper towels. It's the Olympics. It is the moment in our universal experience when we are trying to elevate ourselves past simple competition into something that's more artful, more human. We're going to celebrate what people are capable of. And this is what you do. You're all at each other's throats trying to win that spot. Here's what I want. I want you to write me a love letter to my customers. And what came back was the most lovely, heartfelt. What they did was, the commercial begins with little babies in their little nappies, and each one of the babies falls. They fall on their little butt. A little French baby, a little Russian baby, a little Canadian baby, a little American baby. Boop, bop, beep. And each time, the mom comes and picks them up and goes, oops, and then picks them up and gets them back on their feet. And now those little ones are now toddlers, and they're walking around and on their little feet, and the mothers pick them up. And now they're at the age when they're on ice skates, or they're on skis, or they're on snowboards. And of course, they're falling flat on their faces. And each time the moms are there to pick them up again. And now they're pretty good. And they're young. They're maybe 11. And they're starting to get good. But of course, on the hockey rink, they get smashed. And on the half pipe, they land flat on their face. And the little girl, careens into the barrier, and so on and so on. But the mother's always there, and finally they're in rehab, or they're icing themselves down, and the mom is there again to ease their pain and keep them going until that moment of the competition, and every one of them makes it to the end of that finish line, or scores the winning goal, or makes the jump, or the figure skater finally lands the quad. And what do they do when they win that gold medal? What's the first thing they all do? They look for their mothers. Yeah. And up at the end, it just says,
"Thanks, Mom."
Here's the parade of all of the Procter & Gamble brands, Duracell and Pampers and Tide and Bounty paper towels. And it says hashtag because of Mom.
I remember that. That's
and I'm weeping now.
Yeah.
I'm weeping now. Why? Because it really is a love letter to a mother in a way. It's not a lie, by the way. It's not a lie. It's the truth. None of these kids get there without an Olympian is the story of a mother and father or somebody believing in you enough to keep getting you up. Teaching us that falling only makes us stronger. Now, what prompted it was, I don't want you to be self-interested and try to cram 20% more absorbent or 30% whiter whites into people's brains. I want it so that when they walk down the supermarket aisle on Monday, a 30-cent difference in price is of no consequence. Because when love is involved, money is no object. That's the economics of having enough love for your customers that they are blindly, irrationally in love with you in return. And you can't do that by telling a story where you are the hero.
Yeah.
Procter & Gamble was not the hero. But they get full credit because they saw something others didn't bother to say. It's that insight of caring enough about somebody to notice what matters to them. This is why people vote emotionally. They will vote against their economic interests if they feel seen.
You teach storytelling at Storyfire. You've said it's
Yes.
a skill that anyone can learn if they're willing
Yeah.
to practice. Talk to me about what are the biggest challenges that people come to you? What do they say about their challenges about becoming a storyteller? Do they say, I don't feel like I'm a natural storyteller. I sweat, I get nervous, I'm not authentic. What do you teach that helps people address these core issues, and what are the core issues that you hear?
So the first one is, they say, you seem to lead the most interesting life. You have stories about everything. Well, no, I don't have a more interesting life than you have, but I did learn to write everything down. Small things that happened to me. And 5 or 6 things will happen to you today, Kelly.
Yeah.
That are worth talking about. Little things. This conversation that we had today, there's a story that's going to come out of this. For example, one of the stories I will tell from now on is how incredibly prepared you are and how nice you make it for a guest on your show. For the benefit of your viewers, Kelly does the most magnificent preparation. She sends you this document of all the things she intends to talk about. And she says, here are some of the questions I'm going to ask you. And depending on this, I'm going to follow up with these questions. And because she was so ready to go, it was like taking a test. I started going, geez, how am I going to answer that? I better write these things down. That's a story.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't recognize that as a story until I'm telling them, you need to start noticing that everything that happens to you today is in a way something you learned from or suffered through or made a mistake about. Making mistakes is a really great source of storytelling.
Oh, yes.
Because your mistakes humanize you. It's the two of us together in this journey without an owner's manual, and we're just trying the best we can. And stories about things that humiliated you or that you learned from or that you let fester for 10 years and you finally got up the nerve to call somebody up and apologize or make good or pay them back and so on and so on. These are stories. So my first thing that people encounter is, I don't have anything to talk about. Well, you do if you will start to notice. So please get yourself a notebook and start writing down interesting things that happened to you. You can even do it at lunch. As you're sitting down at lunch, take stock of what happened to you that morning. Anything meaningful happen? Anything small happen that you noticed? Anything that you noticed about somebody else suffering or a problem they're having and somebody else jumped in? So that's the first thing, is you have to start noticing that stories are all around you. An example for me of a very popular video that I did was for a place called the Restaurant of Mistaken Orders in Tokyo. I had nothing to do with this company. I only noticed that this thing had happened, which is this guy, Shiro Oguni, had started a restaurant called the Restaurant of Mistaken Orders that was where the entire wait staff was suffering from memory loss. They were older people who were going through early stage or late stage dementia. And yes, 37% of the time the orders were wrong, but everybody left the restaurant perfectly happy because they had found a way to include these people in society. And they were improving the lives of those people and keeping them alive and lively and entertained and laughing and smiling. And I found that so inspirational that I wanted to tell that story. So stories are everywhere if you'll only notice that they're out there. Little things, little acts of heroism. That's the first thing. The second thing that people will often say to me is, I'm very self-conscious about telling story. I'm terrible in front of audiences. Like, yeah, of course you are. Because there was no time in nature when it was ever a good thing to be standing in front of 100 eyeballs, all staring at you, alone, unarmed, with a spotlight on you. There was no time in nature that was a good thing. And we all survived as a species because your ancestors learned to flee from that situation. Therefore, either there is something wrong with you and you crave that kind of attention, which is true. It's a kind of a flaw that turns out to be not a bug, but a feature in our modern day.
Yeah.
But there is another way to get over that, which is you simply get enough reps in where it has stopped bothering you. That aversion therapy, which is if you've got a tremendously debilitating fear of heights, they can get you over it simply by starting you small, but they keep pushing your tolerance to the point where now heights don't bother you because you've built up a resistance to that fear. You've taught your body what your mind already knew, which is you're okay. Fear of flying, same thing. Well, public speaking is that. But, and here's the thing that most people don't want to hear, which is to get good at storytelling, you have to do it a lot. It doesn't mean you have to do it in front of an audience, but it does mean that you have to take advantage of this fabulous technology that we've all been given, which is you can film yourself telling a story, making a presentation. Most of the time we tell stories is because we're making some kind of presentation, we're trying to sell something or we're trying to convince somebody of something. If you rehearse and you use this device, then you can see how good you are and you can improve. Problem is, most people, when they watch themselves, just cringe. They find it incredibly cringe-inducing to watch themselves. Yeah, I get it. It is cringe-inducing. At first, like jumping into a cold pool. At first, it's, but you get used to it. The day you can get comfortable watching yourself back, filming yourself, that's the day you turn pro, because that's the day you're going to get better. And I will tell people, I do a lot of posts on social media, and people are very impressed by how clean the delivery is. You think that was the first take? No. Generally speaking, it's about 30 takes, 31 takes to get a good, clean thing, the one I like. Do you think it's effort for me to go through 31 takes? No, I'm used to it. I just, take 16. You think I'm angry at take 16 that I didn't get it? No, I've been through this rodeo enough to know, Neil, if you're getting it on take 16, that's pretty good. Now, it's going to, even when I'm hitting the 30s, I'm going, you'll get it. And I don't have a problem watching myself back because I've done it so many times. It doesn't produce that cringe that it used to. People say, I hate the sound of my voice. People say, I hate the way I look on camera. Do you want to get better at this or not? Because I'm telling you, you don't have to be superhuman to get good at it. You just have to be willing, under conditions that nobody else can see you're suffering, to practice it. And people really underestimate how much practice they're going to need to get good. They really underestimate it. How many tennis balls do you think that Andre Agassi used to hit? How many returns of serve?
That 10,000 hours rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to be willing to say, I'm willing to go on this journey. And the good news is that every time you practice, you get a little bit better. If you have to make a presentation or you have to do a keynote speech, or you're the president of an organization and you're going to get up in front of a room of 1,000 people at a Marriott ballroom or a small theater, how much rehearsal do you think they ought to do? They need to do a lot more than they're willing to do. Most presidents and CEOs come off like a stiff, anodyne robot because they didn't put enough energy. They didn't think they had the time. Bro, every time you get up in front of an audience, that is your brand up there. You are making a commercial for yourself. How much is that worth for you? I watched in lots of organizations. I was on Toyota for years. For decades, I was working on that brand. And I watched young people make their way through that organization right to the top. And the people that made it to the top, they were really good in front of a room. And you think it's because they had a natural instinct? No, it's because they were willing to practice. They were back in their hotel room late into the night doing it over and over and over again, so that when they walked in front of that room, the nerves were not nerves from nervousness. The nerves were from excitement. I cannot wait. They were like that racehorse at the beginning of the Kentucky Derby that won't settle down. Do you know what I mean? The one that's just like going, let me the hell out of here. I'm going to kick everybody's ass. The excitement, the nerves were excitement. The nerves were just push go. I'll get this room handled. It's because they put so much energy into it. They put so much they've so overdid it that they own that room. Do you want to be that person? I had a CEO in Canada, part of a petroleum company, who was going to do an earnings call. And it was really important that he make a good showing because he was new. So he really wanted to say to all the reporters and all the investors, don't worry, everything's under control. We rehearsed the crap out of him. I mean, he really leaned into it. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. He was casual and he knew exactly how he was going to answer questions. No prevarication, no sanding. And he would own up to things that were not great. And he would own them. And what he broadcasted to all of those reporters, this guy's not a liar. That influences how they feel about his leadership because they go, he's not one of these anodyne, by the numbers, robotic guy who's basically reading a press release. I'm talking to the real person. Now, if I call him up for an interview, it's actually going to be a good interview. It's going to be good because this guy's, he owns this material. He knows what he's talking about. It was because of preparation, because of the hours of preparation. The difference between that performance and an average performance was literally millions of dollars in stock. Literally millions. So how much was that preparation worth? The amount of preparation he put into it was a penny an hour compared to what they got back. And this is what most people don't understand about storytelling is, even if you think you know the story, do it enough times you can choose your words very deliberately. You know the timing. You've watched yourself. You're as good as you can be. You don't have to be Richard Burton. You don't have to be Daniel Day-Lewis. You don't have to be Ryan Gosling. You just have to be the best version of you to get way more value out of whatever you're presenting. To make, imagine the mathematics, the economics of this. You are a young creative person, and I can help you get 20% better at the way you tell your stories. If you're 20% better, you're selling 10% more work. And they're not your worst ideas. You're selling 10% more of your better ideas, the ones that are harder to sell because they're new and they're more interesting and they're provocative. If you're selling 10% more of your best ideas, in 5 years, you have a completely different portfolio of work than your other self. You're not even the same. You get hired, they don't get hired. You get promoted to creative director, they do not get that promotion. When layoffs come around, and you know how it is in the ad business, it's Hunger Games in the ad business. Absolutely. You're not the one that gets laid off. You tell me what that's worth. That is almost priceless. That CEO, by the way, up there in Canada, he said, "Wow, man, you don't charge enough." I'm like, "I know, bro, but it's, how do you persuade somebody that millions of dollars are at stake? You kind of have to live through it." And then you go, I got to send my CFO to you. This woman was fabulous. She had a very, very thick Ukrainian accent, and she was very self-conscious about her accent. And she wanted to get rid of it. And I'm like, "Sister, you do not want to get rid of that accent because it speaks volumes about you. It talks about your bluntness and your toughness. They don't speak Ukrainian. You've already got a leg up on these people. You know things they don't know. You know what they think you are? They think you're a chess champion every time you walk in that room. And they think you have survived a shipyard strike. Don't get rid of it. Just embrace yourself. Be the person you are. And they won't, they'll think twice about challenging your authority for fear that you're going to stab them in the hall.
Agreed. So. Well, last question I have for you. I watched your TEDx talk, The ROI of Kindness. And out of that, I'm guessing out of that came something that you developed called the Conspiracy of Kindness, which is a platform for storytelling about ordinary people doing quiet, generous things. Can you tell us about it and what you plan to do with it? Because I think it's a great story.
Yeah, so the conspiracy is that in a world where AI is sending out anodyne slop and where the algorithms are rewarding division, rage baiting, provocative, ugly things that are getting said. In that world, the conspiracy of kindness is don't be part of that problem. Be the solution. Be the antidote. Talk about positive things. Yeah. Share stories from your real life about the generosity of strangers, about the nice things people have done. Let's be the real people talking about real things, small people, small things, little things, to remind people that human beings are not so bad. And the reason I call it a conspiracy is I know there is a conspiracy among the algorithm writers who know perfectly well that they are making people angry, and they know perfectly well that they are dividing us, and they know perfectly well that they are making teens suicidal. They know it, and they don't stop. That's a conspiracy. So ours is also a conspiracy. Like everywhere you go, to everyone you speak, in your business and with your clients and online, let's remind each other that human beings are not so bad and that we don't have to be alone. And don't retreat into the rabbit hole and scroll all the time with your device. Get out and be friendly and make, like a dog, make the first move. That's the conspiracy of kindness. The ROI of kindness is you'd be shocked at the return you get on small, sweet acts of generosity. And I always use it as an example, a car dealer that I knew whose unofficial slogan was, "I'll lose a little money to make a friend." And even though that was the slogan, the reason behind it was, when I do nice things for people, especially in the car business, where they are expecting to get thumped by some aggressive, obnoxious, self-interested pirate who sees every customer as a sheep to be fleeced. If in that business, if I'm nice to people, I will stand out like a shining city on a hill. And so he would do nice things for people, like, for example, in the New Jersey Turnpike in spring, after winter, all that road debris, starts to come up again, and you'll be behind a semi. It's guaranteed you're going to get a rock in your windshield. It's probably going to create a crack. If you can catch the crack before it gets too big, you can stop it from ever getting bigger. So what this car dealer would do, if you pulled into his parking lot, even without you asking, and certainly without him charging you, he would fix the crack in your windshield. Send a guy out or a woman out to go out and fix that crack with a little hypodermic of adhesive. They would do it, and he wouldn't tell anybody, because he wanted to create a kind of urban myth, a sort of that there are leprechauns over there at this Toyota dealership that will fix your windshield for free, because the story is so disproportionate good advertising from the charge. Just the fact that, and people would abuse that, and he didn't care. Like, they would show up, pull in to get their windshield fixed, get it fixed, and they just pull out again. You think he cares? No, he doesn't care. He wants them going out into Passaic and going, "This sucker down there, down on the turnpike, fixed my windshield for nothing. What a sucker. What an idiot." Really? You think he's being an idiot? Because now everybody knows where he is and what he's doing. And now they all know where the customer acquisition cost of somebody thinking that he's this. How powerful is it when somebody thinks you're a sucker in the car business? If they think you're a sucker, they're coming to you to buy their car because they think they're going to get one over on you. A second thing he would do is he was very, very hard on his salespeople. Say, "I want the customer in and out of here in less than 3 hours. I don't want them hanging out. Look, if you have to lose $500, I want them out of here in 3 hours or less." Why? I want the urban myth to be true, that they're going to have you out of here in a heartbeat. If you go in thinking it's going to be an all-day thing, which it is for a lot of stores, no, that's not how they work. And they'll lose money to make a friend, knowing that if they're that way on the sale, they can come back to you for service. And service is where they make their money. And they're very good to you on service, and they don't gouge you, because to gouge somebody on service means they won't come back. No, they're fair about it. It's all of these gestures that they don't have to do it that way, but they're nice about it, and they make it nice. And what happens? They can't stop the traffic going in there. They're busy all the time. And the service bays are busy all the time. And people kind of don't argue about what it costs because it's reasonable. And do you know how efficient it is when my service manager doesn't have to spend any time arguing with people? It's very efficient.
Yeah.
And how do you think the people feel in the service bays when he used to have this thing? I don't know if he still does it, but he did at the time. This was 15 years ago. So he used to, if an older woman came in and she wasn't made of money, she was driving a 20-year-old Corolla, he would just tell the service writers, "Listen, do me a favor. If Mrs. Hotchkin-Gertis, if her charge is less than $150, less than $200, but just can for a tune-up or an oil change, or she just wants an inspection, do me a favor. Just give it to her. Don't charge her for it. But don't tell her it's from me, and don't tell her it's the policy of the store. Because I don't want people coming in thinking that's the policy. I want her to think that it's you. I want her to think she's got a guy. Because what will happen is Mrs. Hotchkin-Gertis is going to go back to her bridge club and tell everyone.
Yes, she will.
She's going to tell her son. She's going to tell her daughter. And you know what they're going to think? They're going to go, "Wow. Not only did they not chisel my mom, they kind of watch out for my mom." So if that's how they treat vulnerable people, I'll probably get a pretty good deal. The statistic is he reckoned that for every time he gave away a free tune-up, they sold 11 cars.
Wow.
Because the neighbor heard about it. The brother-in-law heard about it. All the kids heard about it. The coffee clatch, the bridge club, the tennis club, the golf club, they all heard about it. You can see how quickly that fire would spread. And as soon as a neighbor hears about it, they tell another neighbor. And so on. That's the ROI of kindness. So it makes good economic sense. And if you saw my TEDx up there in Grand Prairie, then you saw the story of these trolls, which is a little thing like that can go a long way at improving the day of a forward-facing customer service person. You know the abuse they take. You know how tough it is to do a job that faces customers, because not every customer is sweet. All it takes is 2 swamp donkeys and your whole day is ruined.
Yeah.
But if you get a customer who shakes you up by being so overly nice to you and funny and sweet and tries to restore your faith in humanity, the ROI of that kindness will get repaid for you going out in the world like that. You'll find that, by the way, I got a great one. Geez, I wish I could remember who told me this. They said that if you really want to make a server just laugh and smile, get them one of those scratch-offs. and like if it's $1 or it's $5, if you become famous for that at your restaurant, they're going to go like, oh, I want that table. Because for all I know, they're going to make me a millionaire. Could happen. Could happen.
You are
that could be
all sorts of ideas and stories, Jill. This is amazing.
That could be $100,000 tip for all you know. And by the way, I never stick around to see what comes out of the car. I don't, because I don't want to know if I just lost $100,000.
Yeah. Eventually you'd see it on the news. Well, thank you so much for sharing your storytelling insights today, Neil. We'll provide links to your website, your social media channels, and your contact information in the transcript. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. And I just want to tell your listeners one more time how glorious you are as a person and as a podcaster, how well prepared and how personable. So, Kelly, big fan of yours.
Ditto. Thank you so much.